Got tender loving care here. So that BMF title is on the line between Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, and I have an idea. We all know that Jorge Masvidal retired, but how fascinating would it be if Jorge Masvidal came out of retirement? And Jorge Masvidal cannot call out Nate Diaz because Nate Diaz is out of the UFC and boxing. Jake Paul. But what if Jorge Masvidal called out Nick Diaz? Because Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz were supposed to run it back because of the doctor stoppage to win the original BMF title. So that's just an idea. If Jorge Masvidal, who still signed with the UFC but retired due to a loss to Brazilian submission artist UFC fighter, slipping my name here, so who's fighting back to back. El Durinho, I know that for sure. Durinho, that's always, that's why nicknames are so fascinating, because sometimes you remember people by their nicknames. Gilbert Burns, there we go, Gilbert Burns. I didn't have to look it up. I was going to look it up, but so if Nate Diaz fights Jake Paul, he's not available. And all we heard after the fight between Jorge Masvidal, Gamebred, and Nate Diaz was run it back. Gamebred said it, Nate Diaz said it, and this could be a very special episode of the UFC. UFC run it back. Or ideally, it'd be with Nate Diaz. It'd be a rematch, but Nate isn't available. Nick Diaz is available, and Nick Diaz is waiting to compete against someone. Now, since Nick Diaz is signed to the UFC, has never yet won a UFC title, although Nick Diaz was the Strikeforce champion and many other organizations, and Jorge Masvidal has never officially won a UFC title besides the BMF title. Who two better candidates than Nick Diaz and Jorge Masvidal? And Jorge Masvidal says, I'm going to stay retired. I'm never coming back. Okay. But until that contract expires, Jorge Gamebred Masvidal is still signed to the UFC. And this is still a possibility. Never has there been someone who's competed against the brothers, like for an Vengeance. And maybe this could be, the Run It Back series or the Vengeance series, but that would be big. And that could be hosted anywhere in the U.S., because we have two American competitors, either Florida or even California or somewhere else. This could be big. It could even be neutral territory, Minnesota. It could be anywhere. So it would also be significant because what are the two hottest, warmest places in the United States? People usually talk about either California or Florida. Both California and Florida have a Disney. So it's not necessarily east versus west like many people say, between New York and California. This would be Florida competing against California, Lodi, Stockton, and Miami. Wow, that would be good. That would be a very, very competitive card. They could either be the Coleman event or the main event for the BMF title. Now, I'm not the most excited for Poirier versus Gaethje. I'll watch it if I'm available. But those two as the BMF, I don't know if they can top Nick Diaz and Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. Um, that would be very, very significant. Now, there are some other bouts that we can talk about here, but for the most part, that BMF title is interesting. Um, I know that the UFC original title, that championship, that gold belt, is worth around 350K, give or take, a few hundred. And if you have any updates on that, let me know. I know that BMF title is probably worth about half of that. So it's interesting because we're in an era where these bouts are they mean something culturally. These bouts, for example, Mike Platinum Perry's platinum belt. It's interesting because Mike Perry even stated platinum over gold, and then Conor McGregor went inside the ring with the BKFC gold title, championship title, and there's always been a comparison, a juxtaposition to platinum and gold, silver, but that BMF title, I thought of it as a silver belt, right? You get gold, silver, bronze. Me, I'm a North American Grappling Association champion. I've won many titles as well, and gold, silver, bronze. But that title now might be platinum, the UFC's version of not necessarily second place, but the People's Champ. Now, it's called the BMF, but what if it was called the People's Championship bout? Or if the UFC created one like that? So, it's probably not going to get reversed. The decision's been made that BMF title that we thought Gamebred Masvidal retired with was going to be retired, but it's going to come back regardless, and Jorge Masvidal will no longer be the BMF champ, although the original BMF champ. And I'm just making some suggestions because I don't see Poirier or Gaethje as the BMF. I think that was just thrown there. It's unnecessary, but to each his own. It's gonna bring eyes to that bout, and we'll see from where it goes from there. Maybe there's a reunification. Maybe something happens afterwards. Maybe Poirier or Gaethje, one of them, is the undisputed BMF champ, but they can't be undisputed until it's defended, rightfully so. And I don't count split decisions, either majority, submissions, KOs, finishes. But it would be interesting if one of those two won the BMF title and then called out anyone. But then what if Gamebred came back for one more bout to reclaim his BMF title that he never lost? And then after that called out Nate Diaz, who will probably be going into the Jake Paul boxing bout or have finished the Jake Paul boxing bout, or Nick Diaz. Just some things to think about. Thank you for listening today. God, tender love and care. Remember, health is wealth.